Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up with me, Rachel King. This is where we leave convention at the courtroom door and dive into your real stories, bold and unpopular opinions, and change-making ideas that really shake the legal world up and change where change is desperately needed. I'm here to shake it up, talk about unfiltered insights, and amplify voices that need to be heard. So are you ready? Let's get it. Put the gavels down and the voices up. Welcome back to Gavels Down, Voices Up. I'm Rachel King, and today we are going to be talking about a topic near and dear to my heart. In fact, I am so passionate about this. This is the most enjoyable area of law that I practice. And I don't mean enjoyable like it's fun, but I find it the most rewarding. Today is all about elder abuse. I'm a certified specialist in the state of California for probate, and I handle elder abuse quite often. Why is it rewarding? Because, man, just like kids, our seniors seem to be as vulnerable and more victimized from an abuse standpoint than maybe any other adult. Of course, everybody's susceptible to abuse, but it's our seniors that really get taken advantage of. Let's talk about elder abuse and what it looks like. First, what is an elder? Well, in California, typically we are considering people over the age of 65 to be a senior and to be what this area of law typically covers. There are some exceptions to the rule, but I always like to start with if you are over 65, then these laws apply. If there's a unique situation, then it could be even if you have not reached the age of 65. And what abuse is it? Well, we're talking about elder abuse. That's, again, somebody that's typically over 65, and we're talking about physical abuse. Maybe that goes without saying. We're talking about financial abuse, maybe the most common, but we're also talking about emotional abuse. And wow, that can come in really unforeseen circumstances. And what is tragic, absolutely tragic about this, not necessarily that 1 in 6 seniors are victims of elder abuse, though that's a pretty alarming statistic. I mean, go out to dinner at Sizzler at like a 4 p.m. senior special and count the amount of heads that are there, and you think 1 in 6 is the victim of elder abuse. That's devastating. That's not the worst part. The worst part is that 60% of the elder abuse cases are elder abuse caused by family members. Oh my God, that is shocking and devastating because we're all supposed to love our family and we're supposed to support and especially take care of our seniors who have done everything to take care of us, hopefully over their lives. And then you throw in that most elder abuse is not reported, and that makes these statistics even more shocking, right? Because how many cases are we not even finding out about? The good news is elder abuse has really come into the limelight recently, and there's a lot of things that are being done by not only the FBI, but law enforcement and other agencies to try and put a squash on elder abuse. Most common, we're talking financial. I would say that that is the most common. I've seen financial elder abuse occur where money was taken. We've all seen the scams, maybe gotten an email where the Prince of Egypt wants to be your best friend, and if you wire them some amount of money, they'll wire it back. I've personally witnessed seniors get sucked into that, and that's really sad because they're wiring tens of thousands of dollars often to a senior. I've seen scams even very recently where we are combining emotional and financial abuse so that the senior who is lonely and maybe recently widowed or by themselves finds themselves on the internet, creates some kind of connection with essentially a thief and starts giving a lot of money because this person is totally playing on their heartstrings and saying all of the things they need to, and they create an emotional bond with this fictitious person really that's asking for money, and so they spend the money. It would be sad if anybody gave that kind of money. It's always sad and not appropriate to take money by fraud or by other purposes. But when you think of somebody who's over 65, in most cases, they're fixed income. So if they come off of $40,000, they don't have the opportunity to re earn that, maybe like somebody who is in their 20s or 30s and can still create income or earn money. So we're talking financial schemes that can really devastate somebody's entire existence, their livelihood, because it will eat into the money that they need to provide for themselves for the rest of their life. So financial, I've also seen where houses have been taken and they sign a deed, but they don't really realize it's a deed. And the next thing they know, they're getting an eviction on their door saying that they need to vacate a house that they've always had because they didn't realize that the document they signed a couple of months ago was giving away their house. I've seen loans go through where a senior thinks that they're refinancing their house, getting some kind of reverse mortgage or just a better interest rate, only to find out that really they were selling their house to somebody else or that they weren't going to see their money. I've seen schemes where the survivor is promised to keep a house if they take X, Y, and Z steps, but then really that was just used to have survivor sign over their rights. Scams, they come in all shapes and sizes. Financial is around money. How are we going to take money from a senior? And there are a ton of laws in place that say you can't do it. We have a lot of protections, and we'll talk about protections as well. Another kind is physical, right? So physical abuse, I think, is one that we often associate whenever we're talking about any kind of abuse, whether it's elder abuse or domestic violence or some other form of abuse. When you think of the words abuse, I think most commonly we think of physical violence, and it exists in elders and seniors as well. Same age category. The times that I've seen this come up are less blatant than maybe we had in like a domestic violence situation. It typically, the ones that I've seen come in the form of frustration. So a caregiver or a family member is getting frustrated maybe with the needs of the family member or their charge. And so they shake them, right? Like, just, oh my God, stop it, or sit down, or, they use their physical being to control the senior who maybe isn't doing what they want or out of frustration. Not okay. Again, if somebody is suffering from dementia, I don't know anywhere that says that you can use physical violence to control them, but also probably not very effective. In any event, there are laws in place to protect our seniors from all of the physical abuses, not just the same laws that are in place to protect the regular, I don't want to say the regular people, but all of us that are not yet seniors from violence. We have special laws to protect our seniors from being victims of physical abuse. And then emotional abuse. Oh, and this one just makes me so sad. I've seen emotional abuse most commonly with family members and friends. And emotional abuse can be isolating, taking away access to phone and to other people, to using the fact that you've given up your entire life to come and take care of this person as a way to try and get something else. So typically emotional abuse, it is abuse, and it is used to get something else, whether that's financial or some kind of reward. But emotional abuse in the cases that I've seen have been very isolating and used to kind of manipulate the senior to get something or to make them feel badly. So, what do we do? Well, like most things, prevention is always easier. When we are talking about preventing abuse, that means being involved and getting one step ahead. And if we can prevent the abuse, that's always better than chasing after it or trying to stop. The best way to prevent is, again, to be involved. knowing that elder abuse is most commonly caused by a family member or a caregiver gives us an opportunity to go and say hi and get to know the caregivers and the other family members that are involved, to be a presence to kind of monitor whether there is something that is shady going on or that needs to be concerned, or whether things are on the up and up. My grandmother, who has now passed away, was living in an assisted living facility, and there was a time where there was discussion about whether the caregivers that she was using at the time were acting on the up and up, or whether they were going down kind of an inappropriate, potentially abusive route. Things like having my grandmother pay for outings and groceries and Target trips, things like that. My family's response to that was to get involved, spend some time getting to know the caregivers, explaining to the caregivers how involved we were in my grandmother's life so that they were aware that we would be watching them. Again, not trying to disrupt my grandmother and her caregiving services, but just to let them know, like, hey, this is kind of our boundaries and we are watching it. Shortly thereafter, they stopped communicating and wanting to provide care for my grandmother. So who knows? Maybe we scared them away. Maybe they were trying to do something untoward. I'm not really sure. But the bottom line is, if they were going to do something, they didn't. And we were able to get caregivers. It happened a couple of times that did not take advantage. So being present and being aware and being involved is hands down the best thing that I think can be done to prevent elder abuse. Having open communication. Depending on where your senior is at will depend what kind of conversation that looks like. Certainly, if you have an advanced stage dementia parent, that's going to be a whole lot different than somebody who might be recently widowed and susceptible to undue influence. Not only is capacity an issue, but really the ability for your senior to even understand, comprehend, and take action might change. What can you do? Well, if you suspect elder abuse, tell somebody. Don't keep track. We've got all sorts of resources out there. The FBI has become involved in preventing elder abuse, so you can reach out to your local FBI and see if it's something they handle, or to file a case. Certainly, you can always reach out to your local district attorney, because this is criminal in nature. There are laws that say it's illegal to do this criminally. I've seen more and more district attorneys being willing to prosecute elder abuse than before. So reaching out to your local law enforcement can be really helpful. Maybe they'll take a case, maybe they'll help you take down the abuser, but also they might have other resources. There's government agencies, adult protective services, there's ombudsmans, at least in California. Maybe you have something like that. APS, Adult Protective Services, is really for seniors that are living on their own independently, whereas the ombudsmans are for seniors that are living in some kind of assisted living or rehab facility. So that's kind of how I explain to people that you should decide whether you're going to call APS or the ombudsmans. You could reach out probably to either one, and if they're not the correct agency, everybody I've ever talked to at both APS and the ombudsman's office have been so incredibly helpful. Senior centers have tons of resources, so they may not be able to do something directly, but might know a person, or they might know a person who knows a person, right? So reach out to local senior centers if you suspect that there's some kind of elder abuse, whether it's financial or emotional or physical. SAFE, that's one agency that I've had people use. I think it's Safe Alternatives for Families is what the acronym stands for, but I'm not totally sure. I should know that. I'm usually pretty good with acronyms, but not always. And then FAST, another acronym, Financial Abuse Specialist Team. They don't exist everywhere, but if you can find one, reach out. They are a wealth of information with lots of different resources specifically to handle fast financial abuse. I think that's the acronym. Oh my gosh, if I got it wrong, like, don't hold it against me. I'm doing my best with acronyms. And even though I was in the Army and I truly love acronyms, I find that the older I get, I'm at this weird place in my life where I have so much information. I don't know where to keep it all. I don't know where to store it. And so some of it just falls out, or I just make it up as I go. There's a possibility that one of these acronyms I didn't know, and my little brain was like, Oh, that sounds good. Let's do that. In any event, reaching out to any of these prevention, or as soon as you realize or suspect something, is going to be easier.
And now for a quick break. This episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up is proudly brought to you by King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated. We're not just about winning cases, we're about making a difference. Whether it's family law, probate litigation, or standing up against elder abuse, we bring experience, empathy, and excellence to the courtroom. At King Law Firm, we're more than lawyers. We're your team, in your corner, advocating for your rights and making your voice heard. Visit us at thelawyerking.com and on the socials at The Lawyer King to see how we fight with you and for you. King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated, where your fight becomes our fight. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
Think of it this way. If 80-year-old woman who was recently widowed and is very lonely, has all adult children who she gets along with, but that are also raising their own families, so they're very busy, gets online and starts having a conversation with who she thinks is a very nice gentleman, also recently widowed, and they start having a communication, whether it's via text or WhatsApp or whatever the communication device is. And he says something like, oh, I'd love to come and see you, but I can't afford it. And she's lonely and she's sad. And she's like, oh, that might be really nice. I've had an emotional connection, but I don't want to tell my kids because they're so busy. They have all of their lives. I'm just going to do this on my own. I'm going to go ahead and send this person $10,000 so that we can have a really lovely time meeting. You're not going to get that $10,000 back. How are you going to get it? It's probably somebody overseas. Jurisdiction would be an issue, even if you had the ability to figure out who it was. So stopping, preventing is always easier. Chasing is necessary sometimes, right? And I've had very successful stories where were able to get a house back and prevent an eviction, prevent somebody from losing their house and being able to, in this case, pass away in their house, which is a beautiful thing because that's all that they wanted. So we were able to save it, but cash can be really challenging. So even if you suspect it, I would say do a little digging, look into it. If you're wrong, hopefully you're wrong, right? That's what I tell people when they call me. I'm like, gosh, hopefully we are wrong. Hopefully there is no physical abuse. Hopefully all of the money was either still there or was taken legitimately and used for good purposes. Hopefully there was no intentional isolation. Maybe the phone really can't be used anymore. Dad really can't talk on it, so it doesn't make any sense to be paying for it. Maybe everything is on the up and up. That is the best case scenario. Ultimately, that's what every single person that walks into my office wants, is to be wrong. Allow yourself to be wrong, but don't turn a blind eye, because it's really hard to undo it later. If we can get ahead of it, let's get ahead of it. Some of the things that can help is having a power of attorney, having those conversations with your loved one before they get to a stage where they might be susceptible to undue influence or elder abuse. And I say undue influence because oftentimes undue influence can lead to some kind of abuse. Have also used conservatorships. Sometimes abuse comes in a way that is totally unexpected, and our loved one doesn't have capacity, doesn't even have the ability to understand or to see what's going on, just lacks capacity. Again, this might be an advanced stage Alzheimer's patient. It might be somebody that's recently had a stroke or some kind of cognitive impairment. And in those cases, we need to protect them from themselves. So we can go in and do conservatorships. I think in some states they're called adult guardianships. In any event, it's where we go in and we say, hey, this person, we need to make sure that they're not getting abused, that they're getting the care that they need, and that they're getting it on the up and up. Real quick story before we end. I once met a person, a guy. We'll call him a guy for this story. So we'll say I met a guy who was completely non-ambulatory. And I'm not a medical professional, but I'm pretty sure non-ambulatory means they can't move around on their own. Hopefully that's what it means. If not, that's what I mean, is they couldn't move around on their own. And they relied 100% on their caregiver. Caregiver seemed to be good, would come around, do everything that this gentleman needed, went to this grocery store, got all of the things. This gentleman did not have a good relationship with his kids. It was estranged. He wasn't really involved in any of their lives. I think even a couple of them had maybe had adult adoptions go through, so he wasn't even legally their father anymore. Didn't really know any of his grandkids, was pretty isolated for all intents and purposes. He said that he wanted to leave all of his money to his caregiver. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You can leave your stuff to whoever you want, even a caregiver. There's things that we look for to make sure that it's, again, not undue influence and that the caregiver isn't there saying, I'm not going to take you to the toilet, or I'm not going to go bring you food or go to the grocery store unless you do that. That's what we're trying to prevent with caregivers, is the withholding of necessities in exchange for some kind of gain. So in this case, gentleman said, I want to leave everything to the caregiver. All right, nothing wrong with that. Let's just go through the boxes and check it and see what happened. At some point, he died. I did not participate in this. I just learned about this from somebody else, another attorney. I think it was at one of our bar meetings. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't really matter how I found out about it. So gentleman dies. And what happened was, I guess, there was never a change made. I don't know if that's because he couldn't find somebody to do it or what have you, but he never was able to make a change. And this attorney that was telling the story said that when he was contacted, male attorney, I'm trying to keep all the characters separate, but when he was contacted, he overheard the caregiver say, you need to record every conversation you have with your attorney so that I can hear it and I can check it. Well, that was off-putting. Even as I was hearing that, I'm like, oh God, that does not sound like a caregiver that's on the up and up. Anyway, the attorney said that he wasn't able to make that change that caused him concern. Was it elder abuse? I don't know. Maybe. There might have been some kind of emotional elder abuse going on. There might have been some physical elder abuse. There might have been some financial elder abuse. But the bottom line is, in that case, there was nobody to come in and check because this gentleman was on his own. He didn't really have any support, and he had a caregiver who he relied on. And he might have very well wanted to leave everything to her. Maybe that was his genuine intent. But there was that little trigger that other attorney heard that caused him to say, I don't know if this is elder abuse. I'm not really sure what's going on. And he stepped in, or he didn't step in, but he just didn't take action. Maybe no action in that case, was doing the steps in the right direction. Nonetheless, elder abuse can happen in all shapes and forms. It can happen from a random stranger across the internet that I'm seeing over and over, especially with AI and how it is causing our seniors to hear voices that they're familiar with from their family with voice mimicking. It is feeding on their desire to have companionship and relationships. And man, I hear people say, oh, my grandma doesn't know how to use the internet. Let her be lonely and give her some text messaging. I assure you, she will be an expert by the end of the day if it means she can communicate. We're seeing all of these things. And so elder abuse can happen all over the place, across the world, or as close as the caregiver or the child that's right in the house. It can be the neighbor. It can be physical. It can be an emotional. And it is certainly oftentimes having some kind of financial motive. So reach out if you suspect. Don't wait. 10 years later, after mom died, you want to take action because you didn't want to upset her during her life. Oftentimes, it's going to be really, really challenging to prove it. So let's get in there and keep our seniors safe. Help law enforcement put an end to it. Be your seniors advocate. Keep your eyes open. And together, hopefully, we can use technology and vigilance to reduce elder abuse instead of the other way around. If you know anybody that's been the victim of elder abuse or you have a story that could help others, please, I'd love you to reach out. You can find me on the socials. Rachel King, gavels down, voices up. Talk to you next time.
Heard? Then don't just sit there. Subscribe, share, and tell me your thoughts. I'm Rachel King, bringing not just my opinions to the mic, but about the courtroom too. Your part, keep listening, keep engaging, and until next time, let's keep those gavels down and our voices up. Unmistakably up.